Greetings, everyone. I'm Larry Williams, the Director of the Center for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, or CARMA, at Wayne State University. And it's my pleasure to welcome you for another session of Meet the Methodologist, the format in which we take the distinguished visitors that come to CARMA to participate in our consortium webcast program and take advantage of their presence and have a chat about research and career and other types of professional issues. So it's a real pleasure to have in our panel today Mark Peterson, Chip Reichardt, and Russ Johnson. So fellas, welcome to Wayne State University.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
So I generally like to start out with sort of an open-ended question about how it is that you got interested in research methods, and if you like, specifically the topic of your webcast today. And we typically kind of vary the order. Why don't we start with you, Russ, and we'll go this way this time.
Sure. I'm probably the black sheep among the group. I don't really consider myself a methodologist per se, but some of the research topics that I look at have kind of forced me to pay more attention to the methods used. So, for example, today I'm talking about assessing the validity of higher-order multi-dimensional constructs, which in some of our own research, we've looked at core self-evaluation, employee engagement, numerous examples of higher-order constructs. And kind of based on our experience with this, we've realized that in some cases there's something to be desired in terms of going about validating these and developing these. So we tried to come up with some steps on how that might be done. In another area, I've also started working on kind of subconscious or implicit processes, which obviously require different tools to assess than your typical self-report survey. So that kind of forced me to kind of delve into the methods in that direction as well. So it's mostly topic, and then had to push me into the method side of things.
Yeah? Chip, how about you?
Those are two different topics for me. I got interested in research methods originally because of an undergraduate class with Ben Underwood. He presented puzzles every day of alternative explanations. Do you accept this research finding or do you not? Why? And I just loved those puzzles. I loved thinking about those ideas. The topic of my talk is more on teaching research methods and statistics, and I got interested in that from a small grant I received. And then over the years, I've thought more and more about what we teach, and I worry we don't teach students how to think very well, either in middle school, high school, or college. And it disturbed me that I wasn't teaching my students, how to think. We were conveying a lot more knowledge, I think, than teaching skills of thinking. So that motivated me to try to change, and I spend a lot of my time now developing materials to use to give students practice in thinking.
Yeah. Mark, how did you get interested in research methods and cross-cultural research methods?
Like Russ, I've done my best to avoid discussions of methods, but I keep getting drawn into them by substantive issues. In any kind of cross-cultural quantitative work, one winds up dealing with problems of equivalence of all kinds, and there are controversies on how to deal with problems of equivalence, so I get drawn into methods discussions. There are also problems of level of analysis and how to represent constructs, different levels of analysis, and again, lots of controversy. So as I do research, I keep getting drawn into these topics, and I have to write about them. Another big one is boundaries around societal groups that are useful to represent. In organization studies, usually we have individuals, groups, and organizations. In cross-cultural things, we have cultures and societies, and there's all kinds of ambiguities in deciding what the boundaries are going to be around those entities. So I get drawn into methods issues because of substantive issues and various aspects of cross-cultural things.
As a second question, do you have a favorite research methods course that you took while a graduate student? And if so, why that particular one? And Chip, would you be willing to jump in first on this?
Sure. The easy answer is no. What I remember, and I think times have changed, when I was a graduate student, courses were not emphasized. We spent a lot of time outside classes doing research, learning more as an apprentice model. And I think times have changed for the worse, where students are told to spend a lot more time on classes. I do remember an undergraduate class I mentioned before on methods that got me into the field, actually. But graduate education, the classwork was not emphasized. Not to say we didn't learn a lot from classes, but it wasn't emphasized.
Mark, how about you? A particular favorite research methods course?
No favorite.
Yeah. Russ?
I like the SEM class I took. It kind of brought together regression and factor analysis, some of all the smaller topics that we covered in previous classes, and kind of into one class. I could kind of see how it all fit together. And I'll throw out, drop some names from my Akron professors, Rosalie Hall and Andy Snell. They were fantastic teachers to have. So took factor analysis and SEM with them.
Yeah. So do you, are there any particular challenges that you recall about learning research methods or quantitative techniques as a graduate student?
I think the one thing, I'm getting people intrinsically motivated into doing this stuff. If I had data and I had a problem where I needed to use HLM, then I was much more motivated to learn it and use it rather than just sit through a class when there wasn't kind of an immediate need for me. So sometimes, and when we were learning techniques, at least at that time, seemed a little tangential to the work I was doing. It was sometimes a challenge to kind of stay engaged.
Yeah, yeah. Mark, anything you remember about research methods classes as a graduate student?
Technology problems, trying to run regressions using punch cards. There was a time when it was, I remember trying to copy a file into itself. It was still possible to do that. You can run a computer for a long time. That was when we were actually paying for computer money. You can burn up a lot of money copying a file into itself. Trying to run Lizrel on an 8086 machine, which you had to run it overnight, and if you made a mistake, you ran it overnight again. Technical things like that. Everybody now is so incredibly spoiled.
Yeah. Chip, how about you?
Yeah, dropping your deck of computer cards on the way to the computer center. I think my biggest challenge in graduate school was writing. I had to learn how to write well and clearly and thoughtfully. So that, and I was never great at high-level mathematics, so I focused more on the logic of research methods and design.
So all three of you have considerable expertise in your various areas and participate in the review process as a reviewer for substantive papers. And I'm wondering whether you could comment on the most frequent limitations or shortcomings that you see in the papers that you review, whether it's in terms of their theory or in terms of their research methods. Mark, can we get you to lead off on this one?
Sure. One is papers that begin with "It's a dark and stormy night" and go on to peripheral matters for a long time before getting into things that specifically are related to the variables of interest. That's a pretty common one. Another real common one is theory methods fit problems. In the cross-cultural literature, that often means starting a discussion about, it could go either way, starting a discussion based on individual values and then going into national culture, or the other way around, starting with societal culture characteristics and trying to use that to inspire a study that's basically of individual values. But the theory methods misfit problems. Those may be two of the big ones in quantitative submissions that especially we get for JIBs and for the Journal of Organization Behavior, which are the places where I've done most editing work. For ethnographic projects, projects that spend 10 pages describing why quantitative methods are poor and we need to do grounded theory, instead of dealing with the specific aspects of grounded theory, the specific topics that are relevant to the specific ethnographic analysis. Probably the biggest one on qualitative papers.
Yeah. Chip, how about you?
I think asking a good question in research is a very difficult thing to do, and we don't teach people how to ask questions in college. I'm not sure we do a good job in graduate school, but I look for the papers that are creative, that are interesting, that are thoughtful in a broad, deep way, and those are fewer and farther between than I would like.
Yeah. Russ?
I think my biggest pet peeve are seeing SEM models, and because there's an arrow pointing from this variable to this variable, even though all the data were collected in one shot, they're concluding causality with that.
Yeah.
And during my talk today, I'll talk about some of my pet peeves with higher order multidimensional constructs, but I'm not going to steal my thunder now.
Okay. Well, now switching kind of from the substantive side of things to talking about the different areas of research methods or data analysis as an area in of itself, kind of given your vantage points from a big picture perspective, are you think that there are areas within research methods or data analysis that we're doing a particularly good job of investigating and meeting the needs of substantive researchers? Are there areas where we're not doing such a good job?
Well, I mentioned earlier one of my areas of interest in terms of research is looking at unconscious or implicit processes, so things that happen outside people's awareness, intention, and control. And I think most of our methods that we've used and the measurement tools that we use are really good at capturing kind of the more conscious, systematic processes, but we're kind of leaving a lot on the table by not looking at stuff that happens outside awareness. And I know when I ride my bike or drive to work, I'm chewing my gum, singing to the radio, and processing all this information. A lot of this is occurring outside awareness. So I think probably, especially in the OB and organizational psych area, we probably need to start paying a little bit more attention to some of these unconscious processes, and which obviously requires specific methods and measurement tools to get at.
Yeah. Chip, what do you think?
I worry about the application of the advances we're making. I'm not sure. I think we're doing a pretty good job of making advances in methodology. I worry it's not getting translated into the application to the substantive researchers using these methods. There's workshops. CARMA puts on workshops and so on. Those are effective. But I just see as you were commenting on structural equation modeling, I'm not sure the deep understanding of structural equation modeling is, from what methodologists know, is well transferred to substantive practice.
Yeah. Mark, what about in the area of cross-cultural research methods?
Sometimes I have a sense that folks are getting sorted out differences in measure design at different levels of analysis, which is really important when you're trying to design society-level measures on the one hand and individual-level measures on the other hand. Those are different things. Sometimes I have a sense the field is sorting that out, then I get a feeling that people are losing track of what that difference is. So I have mixed feelings about progress on that. Another way that I think there's progress is that there are an increasing number of people who are experienced in working with colleagues in multiple parts of the world. So I think that there's some learning and a sort of an experience base developing of multicultural researchers, if you will. So those are some good things. Some more problematic things are I think sometimes we get into some dogmatism that this approach is better than that approach, in all kinds of different levels, without enough evidence about what approach is best. I'll try to get into some of those issues in my presentation.
Okay. How about a favorite research methods book that either influenced you greatly or that you rely upon a lot now? Chip?
I was greatly influenced by the classic Campbell and Stanley treatise on quasi-experimentation, and what I always saw as the companion book on unobtrusive measurement by Webb, Schwartz, Sechrist, and Campbell. I'm not sure I have the right order of that. I discovered those my first quarter in graduate school, and I was in a different graduate program. I was studying cognitive psychology. I discovered those because Campbell, the author, was in the department, and somehow I saw them, and I ended up reading them, and it changed my career. The more recent versions of Cook and Campbell and the Shadish Cook and Campbell volumes on quasi-experimentation are more up-to-date, and I do look at those for inspiration all the time.
Russ?
I'm always going back to my Cohen, Westinaken for regression, and I really like Rex Klein's SEM texts.
Yeah. Mark?
Really the first few chapters of Hofstede's Culture's Consequences is making the point that level of analysis doesn't only affect relationships among constructs, which most people in management have a sense of, that is, leadership affects performance differently at the individual and the group level, but that it also affects the constructs themselves. That observation was important. That's why I don't have to refer to it a million times now, but it's a major influence in my thinking.
Yeah. Well, you all three have been very successful as scholars, and an important part of the CARMA audience are doctoral students. And so I was wondering if there was any particular advice that you have for doctoral students based on your experiences that might help them achieve success. Russ, you want to start?
Sure. Only been doing this for 5 years, advising grad students, but I think the one thing that became pretty apparent, and I think Chip mentioned this as well, is writing. That's probably the one thing that students need to work on the most. It's also, for whatever reason, the one thing that they seem to resist the most too. I'd say, do a lot of reading journal articles and just write, and with practice, obviously you get a lot better and a lot more efficient. I think that's one important skill.
Yep, Chip?
That is good advice. I would say, too, look at the articles or the books that influenced you, that motivated you to either study what you're studying or inspired you or taught you something interesting, and figure out what is it about them that had such leverage on you, and try to do that in your work as well. You try to write papers that will do that for an audience.
Mark?
Live cheap. Buy a small house or rent. Don't do anything that requires that you teach during the summer. If you have a partner, live on one of the two incomes. Don't depend on both. One of you can probably get a job. But really, personal things, some of which you can control, some of which you can't, probably determine your career success.
Sorry about that. Okay, well, you're here to give the webcast, and so I was wondering if you could each give a brief summary of what you're going to be talking about later this afternoon. Mark, would you care to start?
Yeah, I'm going to have three main sorts of topics. I'm going to talk about sort of the context for cross-cultural management research, the basic constructs we're trying to deal with. Then I'm going to talk about some technical issues that show up in cross-cultural research. And then, because cross-cultural research is a little bit like international business, anytime we do international things, there are a lot of things that aren't technical that come into play. There are a lot of life issues. I'll be talking last about the different kinds of roles of people in cross-cultural research, that is, organizers of the research, collaborators in the research, and users, and the different methodological implications of being in those different roles.
Chip, how about you?
I'll be talking about teaching research methods and statistics. Most of the talk will focus on misconceptions that I think we foster in statistics textbooks and in research methods textbooks. Most will be very conceptual, and it's kind of a challenge. Shouldn't we be doing better at teaching these conceptual underpinnings? The overarching theme of my talk also will be teaching students how to think. Research methods and statistics are a very powerful way to think about the world. I'm not sure we're doing as good a job in general in education, but even in those classes, teaching students how to think and not just memorizing facts or designs or statistical techniques. I'll argue partly for an apprentice model. Instead of teaching specific tools, which is what I think we do, I think we need to be teaching people how to build. If you're a carpenter, how to build a table, how to build cabinets, how to actually do something rather than just learning about the specific tools we're using.
Russ?
I'm going to be talking about the effects of common method variance on higher-order multidimensional constructs. As organizational scholars, I think we do a pretty good job of ruling out common method variance, CMV, from relationships between predictors and outcomes. But what we haven't really looked at is to what extent does common method variance influence the shared variance among indicators of these higher order constructs, and whether that could bias the emergence of these constructs.
Okay. Last, I like to close by getting a little bit more personal, if I may, and I'd like for you to comment on anything that you might do that's special, that gives you inspiration or motivation for your work, and then also if you'd like to comment on the favorite and the least favorite aspects of your work. Chip, would you like to start us off?
I surprised myself. I go to the public library and I look at the new books. I only read nonfiction, but I've been humbled with the quality of writing by, we do such academic writing in our work, at least I do, and I'm a pretty good writer now at academic things, but I'm certainly not a very creative writer in terms of creative nonfiction. So I look for titles on anything, business, social sciences, interpersonal relationships, anything, and I'm intrigued by the creativity and the high quality. To get a book published there is a lot different. We think it's hard to get books and articles published in academics, but you have to have a real market that would sustain it. I look at the quality of writing by wonderful nonfiction writers, Bill Bryson and Malcolm Gladwell. It humbles me, and I love the creativity, the broad range of topics, and somehow that excites me, and I try to think, how can I make my work as appealing as they do, because they don't rely on college professors assigning books, they rely on people actually going out and buying it because they're interested in that topic.
Yeah. How about most or least favorite parts of your work?
The grading, the making of assignments, and the reading of papers is the least favorite part of my work by far.
Yeah, yeah. Mark, what about you? Things that you do for inspiration or motivation, and what you like the most and what you like the least?
I'll often try to get to know, for research purposes, a particular part of the world, so I'll read broadly the literature of all sorts from that part of the world. I did that with Nigeria a few years ago. I'm working on China right now. Another thing is to fill in gaps in background. I've been following along the high school curriculum of a close friend of the family, and it helps me see things that I don't know anything about that I should know something about. So that's been a nice thing. In terms of things I like and don't like, arguing evaluations with students is right up there with arguing with academic administrators, which is almost the same as having any conversation with academic administrators. That's a bit of a joke. So those are the negative side, and of course the reading and writing is fun.
Yeah, yeah. Russ, how about you?
I think I get my biggest kick just working with doctoral students. I love teaching seminars. I love working on papers. And granted, I like when I publish a paper, but when I'm able to publish a paper with grad students, I think I get more joy out of that, seeing their eyes kind of light up. So definitely it's about the doctoral students. In terms of, I don't know if I necessarily have a least favorite. Just this past summer, I switched departments. I moved from a psychology to a management department. So it's been a challenge kind of transitioning in and having to teach MBAs, which I had no experience with previously, coming from my psych background.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule to come here and contribute to our webcast program. We very much look forward to your lectures this afternoon, and I also want to thank you for taking the time to share from your experiences and comment on the profession and the field and offer advice. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Larry.